Power, influence, control. These things aren't reserved for presidents or corporate titans. They are the quiet forces that shape every exchange you have. Every day you negotiate. With every sentence you speak, every request you make, every moment you listen, you are influencing the world around you. But do you do it with intent? Or do chances slip through your fingers? In a culture where volume often wins attention, consider this: true power can come from strategy, empathy, and a deep understanding of the conversation itself. The Art of Negotiation by Tim Castle is more than a manual. It is a strategic instrument. A practical route that shows you how to turn pressure into calm confidence, transform conflict into cooperation, and convert hesitation into leverage. This text will change the way you think, the way you speak, and the way you win. Prepare to access one of the most undervalued strengths you own. The opportunity is there. The choice is yours. From the very first page you will see negotiation not as a narrow skill reserved for suits and legal teams, but as a daily craft that restores the power of choice to you. Whether you're negotiating a multi-million-dollar contract, discussing a promotion, buying a car, or simply deciding where to have dinner, you are negotiating. Life itself is a continuous exchange of influence. Tim Castle is direct: negotiation is not just for CEOs, attorneys, or sales professionals. It is a life technique. Mastering it gives you control over outcomes. Yet most people never learn to negotiate well. They treat it as confrontational, stressful, or something only the naturally persuasive can do. Castle demolishes that misconception. Negotiation isn't about aggression. It is about being methodical, self-aware, and courageous. It is about being ready to ask for what you need and refusing to settle for less. Learn the skill and you can win more often than not. That is not hype, it is a call to change how you frame choices. Negotiation closes doors for complacency and opens them for preparation, clarity, and decisive action. Many of us grow up equating asking with rudeness or greed. We avoid appearing demanding because rejection, awkwardness, or failure seem unbearable. So we remain quiet. We accept the first offer. We let life move us instead of shaping it. Castle challenges this ingrained passivity. Negotiation is not arguing, it is communicating with intention. If you do not ask, the answer is already no. Choosing silence costs you time, money, peace of mind, confidence, and missed opportunities. Those who achieve consistently are not simply lucky, they know how to negotiate. They take deliberate action. They speak up. They arrange conditions for success. This is not manipulation, this is stewardship of your future. Great negotiators are forged, not born. The difference between average and exceptional negotiators lies less in personality and more in preparation, clarity, and mindset. Castle shares that he was not innately bold or magnetic, he built negotiating skill by practicing, learning from errors, and committing to growth. The real separator is belief. Do you think you deserve more? Are you willing to challenge accepted limits? Can you state calmly, "This is what I want, and here's why"? Those who learn to answer yes to these questions change their trajectories. Castle's own path is filled with moments where bold choices and courageous negotiation altered outcomes dramatically. His lessons come from experience, not theory. If he can develop these abilities, so can you. Negotiation is action-based confidence. When you prepare, when you present your case calmly, when you ask for more, you are building inner strength as much as skill. This applies far beyond boardrooms. Negotiation improves relationships, helps resolve conflict, protects boundaries, and enables clear decision-making under stress. The summary you are listening to will guide you through Castle's principles, techniques, and essential mindset changes. It will also push you to think differently. You will learn how to prepare like a professional, speak with precision, address objections with composure, and maintain resilience when things get difficult. Preparation accounts for the majority of success in any negotiation. You will discover how to establish instant rapport and trust, how to request what you need without fear, how to reframe rejection into a chance to advance, and why mastering negotiation can trigger your next meaningful breakthrough. Castle does not promise ease. He promises reward. With the correct mindset, tools, and repetition, you can become someone who negotiates with boldness and lives without unnecessary limits. Take a breath, stand poised, and get ready. This path is not just about gaining negotiating technique, it is about reclaiming your worth, speaking your truth, and refusing to settle. Before you study any tactic, recognize the single most important component of every negotiation, your mindset. Negotiation isn't just about words. It begins with thought. Your internal narrative, your beliefs, and your attitude set the stage long before the conversation starts. The person who believes in their value, trusts their instincts, and approaches the exchange with courage tends to win more frequently. Castle insists the most significant part of negotiation occurs mentally prior to entering the room. Doubt, fear, or feelings of unworthiness leak into posture, tone, and language. Conversely, quiet confidence and a clear purpose radiate and shift influence. This inner energy is the force that changes dynamics. A strong negotiation mindset rests on three pillars: self-belief, clarity about your value, and the bravery to ask for more. Self-belief is the foundational truth: you deserve to be at the table and to request what is fair. Without this, techniques are hollow; with it, even simple methods deliver outcomes. You don't need to be the loudest, you must be the clearest. Build self-belief through small wins, by keeping commitments to yourself, and by rehearsing your worth until it becomes instinctual. Remind yourself that you are not seeking permission, you are creating value and claiming what is reasonable. Confidence in your value is the second pillar. Many people negotiate without a clear grasp of the worth they bring. They ask without evidence. Castle presses you to do both inner work and fact-finding. Identify your strengths, document outcomes you've produced for others, and understand what distinguishes your offer. Confidence is not arrogance. It is precise clarity. Show receipts. Be factual. People mirror how you perceive yourself. Uncertainty invites doubt, quiet authority draws attention. Negotiation is a trade of value. If you want consistent wins, you must own and state the value you deliver. The third pillar is the courage to ask. This is where most attempts collapse, not from lack of tactics but from fear. Fear of rejection, of offending, or of hearing no keeps many from speaking up. Castle reframes no as a step, not a verdict. Courage is like a muscle: the more you exercise it, the stronger you become. Asking is not aggression, it is boldness grounded in reason. Step into your authority and explain why your request makes sense. If you never ask, the answer remains no. If you fail to believe you are worth asking for, you invite the world to undervalue you. Shift from scarcity toward abundance. Scarcity thinking, worrying about losing the deal or damaging a relationship, saps negotiating power. Castle encourages an abundance orientation. Opportunities are not finite, you can negotiate respectfully while protecting your interests. Preparation lets you walk away if needed. The strong negotiator attracts rather than chases. This transformation only happens when operating from worth instead of worry. People sense your energy before you speak. Your posture, breath, eye contact, and tone all signal what you believe about yourself. Enter with a grounded stance, breathe, stand tall, be present. Teach others how to treat you by how you treat yourself first. Build daily habits that reinforce confidence, morning affirmations of strength and readiness, practicing small asks to grow comfort with discomfort, and celebrating every step of speaking up, even if the answer is no. Those small moments accumulate into the inner strength that carries you through larger negotiations. Check your mindset before you draft a pitch or run numbers. Ask, do I believe I deserve more? Do I understand the value I bring? Am I prepared to ask boldly and accept what follows? If yes, you are already on the path. Ultimately, the most powerful negotiators are not always the smartest in the room. They are those who know they belong there. If confidence is your foundation, preparation is your shield. The negotiator who wins most often is not improvising under pressure, they are building a strategy long before the conversation begins. The real negotiation starts well before you sit at the table or pick up the phone. If you arrive without homework, you begin already weakened. Those who prepare shape the agenda, predict objections, control momentum, and protect their leverage. Preparation gives you control of the narrative and reduces the chance of being surprised. Begin by defining your goal with razor-sharp precision. Know exactly what you want. Identify your ideal outcome, your minimum acceptable result, and the point at which you will walk away. Castle calls this anchoring your goal. Your anchor becomes the reference point for everything that follows. If you fail to set it, the other side will impose their anchor and you will react rather than direct. Make your goal measurable and realistic, and rehearse how you will state it clearly. Vague aims produce fuzzy results. Next, step into the other party's shoes. Effective negotiators map the motives, pressures, and constraints facing the person across from them. What drivers shape their decisions? What deadlines or targets do they face? Which fears loom largest for them? Strategic empathy is not manipulation, it is the disciplined work of understanding priorities so you can propose solutions that meet both parties' needs. When you anticipate their objections become opportunities rather than roadblocks. Build your sources of leverage deliberately. Leverage is rarely a gift, it's constructed. Do you bring unique expertise? Are there alternatives available to you? Do you offer timing or access that the other side needs? Even the perception of options changes the balance of power. Walk into the room carrying options, and others will treat you accordingly. Strengthen your BATNA, your best alternative to a negotiated agreement, before you negotiate so you can make choices from power and not desperation. Script your opening. The first sentences in a negotiation set the tone for everything that follows. Practice them until they feel natural. Decide whether you will lead with facts, with a value statement, or with a question designed to surface priorities. Your opening should be calm, composed, and uncompromisingly clear. Avoid hedging language and excessive qualifiers. Practice aloud, rehearse in front of a mirror, or role-play with a partner. The first time you voice your ask should never be the first moment you say those words for real. Anticipate objections and prepare responses. List every reasonable pushback the other side might raise and craft concise, confident replies. This reduces anxiety when resistance appears because you have already processed the scenarios in your head. Objections are not rejection, they are a signal the counterpart is engaged and evaluating. Treat them as data and answer with clarity. Decide in advance when you will walk away. Knowing your BATNA gives you the psychological freedom to refuse terms that are below your threshold. Strengthen alternatives ahead of time so walking away becomes a strategic move, not an emotional reaction. Exiting a poor deal can be the strongest negotiating position because it preserves dignity and resources for future opportunities. Walking away is often the moment that triggers the best offers. Prepare the logistics and environment. Where a conversation happens matters. A neutral space levels the playing field. Adequate time reduces pressure. Ensure the decision makers are present or that you know the timeline for final approval. Control of the physical and temporal setting reduces friction and builds focus. Mental rehearsal is a powerful tool. Before the negotiation, imagine the scene in detail. Visualize yourself entering with confidence, delivering your opening ask, handling resistance, and closing on favorable terms. Picture the exact words you will use, the pauses you will hold, and the calm with which you will respond. Top performers in sports and performance use mental imagery to condition their responses. Negotiators should do the same. When it's time to ask, make your request with authority. Clarity is non-negotiable. Know your precise number, your preferred terms, desired timelines, and the benefits you expect. Vague language invites ambiguity and weak outcomes. Speak with conviction, not apology. Tone and posture reinforce your words. Replace weak openers with direct, value-based language that ties your ask to outcomes you will deliver. Anchor high without being unreasonable. The first figure establishes the negotiation frame, so set an opening that leaves room for movement toward your ideal. Justify your anchor with evidence and context rather than emotion. After you present your ask, stop talking. The temptation to elaborate can undermine your position. Silence often creates the pressure that leads others to reveal concessions or hidden flexibility. Frame your requests as mutual gains. Bold asks can remain collaborative by emphasizing benefits to both sides. Show how your terms protect or improve the other party's interests while ensuring fair compensation or risk allocation for you. This dual framing reduces defensiveness and invites partnership. Practice the ask until it becomes second nature. Role play until you can deliver your opening and your pushback responses without being rattled. The first time you say the words of a major request should never be the moment you are under the most pressure. Rehearse so that your speaking becomes muscle memory. When pushback comes, respond with calm curiosity. Ask open-ended questions that reveal underlying concerns. Use the question, "What would need to change for this to be a yes?" to transform rejection into a diagnostic moment. Rejection hides reasons, uncover them, and you can craft a solution that addresses specific points rather than guessing. Listening is your most underrated advantage. While many believe negotiation is about winning a war of words, the true edge often lies in listening more than speaking. Listening uncovers hidden priorities, reveals constraints, and builds trust. Give full attention and avoid planning your reply while the other person talks. Active listening creates connection and lowers resistance. People who feel understood are more open to influence. Master the strategic pause. After posing a significant question or making an important statement, remain silent. People instinctively work to fill pauses, often disclosing more than they intended. Strategic silence is more than withholding words, it is a tool to invite disclosure and reveal true limits. Use silence to observe body language, tone, and the emotional energy in the room. Ask open-ended questions to surface what the other side truly values. Instead of pitching, guide the conversation with curious prompts, inquire about priorities, fears, and success metrics. These questions create a dialogue and let you design arrangements that speak directly to their needs. Then, listen to what is not said. Hesitation, tone shifts, and posture are data points that convey more than explicit statements. Apply empathy as leverage. Understanding the other side's fears and motives allows you to propose offers that feel fair to them and favorable to you. One simple phrase that opens space is, "Help me understand what success looks like for you." This invites collaboration and reduces defensiveness. Mirror and label emotions to encourage elaboration and diffuse tension. Reflecting someone's last words or naming an observed emotion signals that you are paying attention and invites deeper explanation. Let your counterpart feel in control by guiding them to discover solutions rather than forcing outcomes. When people feel ownership of the idea, they are more likely to commit. Take notes and reference them. Capture key phrases and concerns, then repeat them later to demonstrate attentiveness and alignment. This reinforces credibility and shows you negotiated in good faith. Listening strategically not only reveals leverage but also builds the trust needed for durable agreements. Handle rejection with resilience. No is rarely final, it is often an invitation to find the hidden constraint. Treat a negative response as data. Ask why, and what would make the offer acceptable. Rejection reframed becomes a step in the process, not a brick wall. Use it to decode priorities and adjust your approach. Remaining composed under rejection communicates professionalism and long-term perspective. Rejection also strengthens your skill set by building tolerance to discomfort. Practice seeking small rejections in low-stakes settings so you become more comfortable with hearing no. Each encounter reduces emotional reactivity and increases strategic clarity. In some cases, strategically inviting a strong no can reveal the other side's true boundaries and allow you to recalibrate with precision. When you encounter objections, return the conversation to shared goals. Remind the other party of common interests, the larger purpose, or the mutual gains at stake. This shifts the dynamic from contentious to problem-solving. Persistence matters. Many deals shift from no to yes over time as priorities and constraints evolve. Follow up, refine your proposals, and maintain relationships. The ability to stay in the game often converts today's rejection into tomorrow's agreement. Confidence is a skill cultivated through practice, evidence, and emotional regulation. It is not loudness, it is steady presence. Collect proof of past wins to anchor your belief in capability. Use visualization and posture to influence your internal state. Speak with decisive language and detach from outcome anxiety. Confidence that comes from preparation and purpose is contagious and builds trust. When you carry yourself with quiet certainty, others feel safer and are more likely to engage openly. Remember that confidence grows through action. Seek discomfort intentionally. Every successful ask expands your comfort zone and strengthens your negotiating capacity. Focus on your progress rather than comparing yourself to others. Improvement is personal and cumulative. These are the rules you carry into every conversation. Preparation, empathy, silence, resilience, and confident presence create the framework for negotiation mastery. Use them, refine them, and the quality of your outcomes will change. The essence of persuasive negotiation is not to push harder but to show clearer value. People do not purchase services or ideas, they buy solutions to problems and relief from pain. Your task is to translate what you offer into a tangible improvement in the other person's world. When you frame your proposal as the answer to a problem they care about, resistance decreases and cooperation increases. Start by asking questions that reveal priorities rather than launching into a pitch. Understanding what the other party needs lets you tailor your message so it feels less like selling and more like helpful guidance. Clarify the benefits before discussing price. When you lead with outcomes and impact, cost becomes a secondary consideration. Paint a vivid picture of what success looks like with your solution in place. Use real examples and concise stories that show results. People evaluate deals by perceived outcomes, and when the advantages are clear and credible, the numbers follow more easily. Avoid overwhelming your counterpart with technical details. Simplicity enables decision-making. Build the offer as a package, stacking elements that matter most to the other party. Combine quality, speed, service, guarantees, and flexibility into a single proposition that is easy to evaluate. The whole can feel more valuable than the sum of its parts when the elements are selected to match the counterpart's priorities. Emphasize what relieves their key anxieties and what accelerates their goals. Demonstrate how your proposal reduces risk or produces faster returns. In many cases, buyers will accept a higher headline price if they see lower overall cost through reduced risk, better outcomes, or less management time. Timing matters. Resist the urge to lead with terms until the recipient fully appreciates the benefits. Establish the value frame first, then discuss cost. This sequencing uses human decision psychology to anchor perception around outcomes instead of price. When you do introduce numbers, anchor high enough to allow movement toward your real target, and support your figure with evidence and context. Sell through service. Position your role as a trusted advisor rather than a transactional vendor. When you focus on solving problems and improving outcomes for the other side, you create relational value that outlasts a single deal. Trust makes future negotiations easier and multiplies opportunities because people prefer partners who have demonstrated reliability, competence, and alignment with their success. Silence is a potent tool you must practice. Many negotiators talk to fill gaps, but those pauses are where information surfaces. After you ask a revealing question, stop. Let the other side fill the space. The need to bridge silence often prompts people to reveal more than they planned, giving you intelligence to recalibrate your approach. When you present an offer, resist the urge to justify it immediately. Silence communicates confidence and invites further disclosure. Observe nonverbal cues during these pauses. Changes in posture, facial expression, and breath can tell you more than words will. Use reflective pauses to regain control when emotions rise. In high-tension moments, a deliberate silence resets the emotional temperature and signals that you are composed. It also provides mental room to choose a deliberate response rather than reacting impulsively. Over time, you will become more comfortable with silence. It will feel less like a void and more like an instrument that shapes outcomes. Win-win thinking changes the way you design agreements. Instead of framing negotiation as a distribution of fixed resources, look for ways to expand the pie. Identify interests beneath positions. Positions are what is stated: lower price, specific deadline. Interests are why those positions exist: cash flow needs, risk aversion, or strategic priorities. By uncovering interests, you can explore creative trade-offs that satisfy both sides. Consider non-monetary terms such as payment timing, performance bonuses, exclusivity windows, or joint development that align incentives and create shared upside. Logrolling is one technique to craft mutually beneficial deals. Trade concessions on items of low value to you but that are high value to the other side, while securing concessions on what matters most to you. This requires a clear understanding of priorities on both sides. Without that intelligence, trade-offs will be guesses. Fairness is also crucial. Parties are more likely to honor agreements they perceive as equitable. Establish objective standards when possible, market data, precedents, or third-party benchmarks, to support proposals and reduce perceptions of bias. Ethics and integrity anchor long-term success. Short-term gains from deception or misleading tactics erode reputation and destroy future opportunity. Negotiation power grows when others trust you to be honest and consistent. Be transparent about your interests without surrendering tactical options. Define your ethical boundaries ahead of time so you can act consistently under pressure. When the other side acts unethically, respond calmly and firmly. Setting clear expectations about acceptable conduct and being prepared to walk away sends a strong message: ethical violations have consequences. Cultural sensitivity matters for ethical behavior and practical success. Norms about disclosure, directness, and bargaining vary widely. Understand local standards and adapt your approach. Respectful adaptation builds rapport and reduces the chance of missteps that could be seen as rude or manipulative. Document agreements carefully. Clarity in writing prevents future disputes and keeps both sides accountable. A well-constructed agreement is not a trap but a shared roadmap. It preserves trust, reduces friction, and protects the relationship so it can yield more value over time. Preparation remains the secret weapon. Know your goals, map the other side's constraints, and rehearse scenarios. Define your BATNA and work to improve it before sitting down. Plan your opening, anticipate objections, and practice responses until they feel natural. Arrange the setting to favor deliberation. Neutral locations, adequate time, and access to decision-makers all shift the odds toward better outcomes. Mental preparation, including visualization and emotional buffering, equips you to perform under pressure. Imagine rejection, and rehearse a calm, constructive response so that surprise and emotion don't derail your strategy. Building rapport is a daily practice. Authentic connection creates willingness to share information and to cooperate. Use genuine curiosity to find common ground. Look for shared goals, interests, or background details that humanize the interaction. Mirroring tone and pacing subtly signals affinity, but authenticity is key. Forced mimicry feels hollow. Humor can ease tension when used with sensitivity, but never at the expense of dignity. Maintain respect even in disagreement. Respect opens doors for future cooperation. Confidence is cultivated. It grows from evidence of past wins, from daily acts that stretch your comfort zone, and from rituals that anchor your state. Use posture, breath, and pacing to influence internal feelings. Speak with decisive language and minimize hedging. Detach from the outcome, want the deal but do not need it. This detachment creates leverage because it signals that you can choose alternatives. Confidence is not about overpowering others, it is about steady presence that invites trust. Practice across low-stakes conversations. Every interaction is an opportunity to refine tone, to test anchors, and to build resilience. Role-playing with a trusted colleague allows you to experiment with phrasing and to practice managing difficult responses. Treat each negotiation as a lesson and review outcomes afterward to extract improvements. Continuous refinement is what transforms tactics into instinct. Negotiation mastery is not a single method but a composite of habits: meticulous preparation, empathetic listening, strategic silence, creative value construction, ethical behavior, and confident presence. These elements interact and reinforce one another. Preparation feeds confidence. Listening feeds understanding and uncovers trade-offs. Ethical conduct preserves long-term leverage. Together, they create a reliable path to superior agreements. As you move forward, remember that negotiation is not a formula to be applied rigidly but a conversation to be shaped thoughtfully. Stay curious, pursue clarity, and remain committed to mutual benefit. The more you invest in these skills, the more you convert daily interactions into opportunities for better outcomes. Preparation is more than a checklist, it is a habit that changes how you move through negotiations and life. When you have done the work, you enter conversations from a position of deliberateness rather than reaction. That deliberateness shows in your posture, your pacing, and your ability to remain composed when the unexpected arises. Preparation is not about predicting every variable, it is about building the framework that lets you respond intelligently to anything you encounter. Start by writing down your objectives and ranking them. Clarity on what you absolutely need, what you prefer, and what you could concede provides direction during the heat of a discussion. This prioritized list acts as a compass, preventing drift and last-minute concessions that feel reactive. When you map your priorities, you create a plan for trade-offs and protect your most important outcomes. Research the person opposite you. That research goes beyond LinkedIn headlines or public statements, it seeks to understand pressures, incentives, and timelines. Learn what their organization values, recent decisions they've made, and any external forces they face. The better you understand their context, the more accurately you can tailor options that feel like solutions to them. In practice, this reduces friction because your proposals will address the problems they already recognize. Scenario planning sharpens your readiness. Imagine likely objections and draft concise replies. Consider worst-case responses and decide in advance how you will handle them without losing composure. Preparing these responses turns anxiety into rehearsal. When pushback arrives, your reply will sound composed because you have already heard the objection in your head and crafted an appropriate answer. That calmness signals authority and steadiness. Identify and strengthen your BATNA. Your best alternative to a negotiated agreement is your safety net and your leverage. The stronger your BATNA, the less you will feel forced to accept unfavorable terms. Spend time improving alternatives before you negotiate so the choice to walk away is credible. This doesn't mean you intend to leave, it means you can leave without regret if the offer fails to meet your core needs. Design the opening sequence deliberately. Your initial words shape expectations and emotional tone. Decide whether you will lead with a value statement, a question to learn priorities, or a direct ask. Practice that opening until it becomes natural and confident. A polished opening reduces the risk of being derailed by surprise and sets the negotiation on your intended course. Logistics matter more than many people assume. The location, the timing, and who sits near whom all influence psychology. Choose a setting that reduces distractions and signals equal footing. Make sure the right decision makers can attend or that you have a clear process for approvals. When time is abundant, pressure drops and better decisions emerge. When a meeting is rushed, concessions are more likely. Control these small details and you will control the field. Mental rehearsal is an underrated tool. Visualize the room, your posture, your breathing, and the exact sequence of requests and responses you will use. See yourself handling rejection calmly, pivoting to alternatives, and closing on terms that respect your priorities. Mental imagery trains your nervous system to respond competently under stress. Athletes and performers use this tool habitually. Negotiators who do the same gain a quiet advantage. Practice the muscle of asking. Begin with small requests in everyday life, an upgrade at a cafe, a small deadline extension, a better table reservation, and build tolerance for the discomfort of asking. These micro-practices are where courage is strengthened and habit forms. Over time your threshold for asking increases and larger negotiations feel less intimidating. Each small ask that ends in either yes or a constructive no nudges your confidence upward. Align on facts early. Shared facts reduce disputes later. Where possible, establish objective benchmarks or external references that both sides accept. Market rates, third-party valuations, or performance data can act as anchors supporting fairness. When both parties agree on key facts, negotiation becomes a problem of allocation rather than a contest about reality. This shift makes creative solutions more likely. Create options before you negotiate. If you present multiple acceptable packages rather than a single figure, you invite choice and make trade-offs easier. When people choose among alternatives they feel agency and often reveal preferences. Your job is to assemble options that differ in meaningful ways so you can trade less valuable items for those you prize most. This reduces the need for blunt concessions and fosters collaborative problem solving. During the negotiation, manage tempo. Speed and cadence affect perception. Rushing signals neediness, glacial pacing signals disinterest or impenetrability. Use deliberate pacing to give weight to important points. Slow down on key sentences, pause to let them sink in, and watch how the counterpart reacts. Strategic pacing is a low-cost way to increase the perceived importance of your positions. Stay anchored to your principles. Your ethical boundaries are a North Star. Decide in advance which tactics you will not use and what level of concession is unacceptable. Acting within clear values builds a reputation that compounds over time. People prefer to do business with those they trust. Maintaining integrity now increases the value of future negotiations. When conflict arises, return to shared interests. Repeating a mutual objective reframes the exchange from adversarial to cooperative. Remind the other side of the larger goals that brought you together and propose solutions that align incentives. Negotiations framed around joint outcomes open creative paths that positional bargaining does not. Take ownership of the follow-up. Negotiation does not end at the verbal yes. Confirm details in writing, clarify timelines, and set communication expectations. This prevents misunderstandings and ensures that the agreement survives the messy reality of implementation. Clear documentation is not bureaucratic friction, it is the final act of care that preserves the value you created at the table. Finally, learn from every conversation. Debrief yourself and, when appropriate, gather feedback. Which questions revealed the most value? Which moments felt uncertain? What concession would you avoid next time? Reflective practice sharpens instincts and converts experience into strategy. Preparation shifts negotiation from a game of chance to a discipline of intent. It builds authority, reduces emotional reactivity, and opens the space for creative, fair, and durable outcomes. Move into conversations prepared, and you will find that you negotiate not from fear but from choice, not from scarcity but from abundance, and not as a contest to be won but as a collaboration to be designed. One of the most impactful shifts you can make is learning to ask with conviction. People rarely get what they hope for because they ask weakly, apologetically, or vaguely. The clarity of your request sets the boundaries of the negotiation. Before you speak, be precise about the terms you want, the exact figure, the timeline, the responsibilities, and the conditions that matter to you. When you present your request, do so without apology and with a voice that reflects reason and evidence rather than insecurity. Language shapes perception. Replace tentative qualifiers with direct statements that link your ask to the value you will deliver. This approach does not make you demanding, it makes you clear. Clarity reduces ambiguity, and clarity increases the chance of a decisive response. There is an art to setting your opening anchor. The first number or proposal often defines the conversation's reference frame. Anchor above your target but within a defensible range, and be ready to justify your position with facts, case studies, and outcomes. When you anchor high, you create space to offer concessions that feel like compromise while still landing near your objective. Resist the urge to lowball out of fear. Anchoring low signals scarcity and narrows your negotiating room. After you make your opening ask, stop speaking. Silence after the ask is a strategic move. It invites the other party to respond first and often prompts them to reveal more than they planned. That pause is an invitation to understand the psychological limits of the person across the table. Tone and posture are part of your persuasion arsenal. When you ask, carry yourself with composed authority. Tone that is measured and steady communicates confidence more effectively than flamboyant displays. Posture that is upright but relaxed projects calm determination. Small adjustments to your breathing and pace can transform nervousness into presence. Practice those nonverbal cues in low-stakes environments until they become habitual, so they remain available when the stakes rise. Rehearsal matters. The first time you make a major request should not be under the pressure of the actual moment. Practice your words until they feel natural and your pauses feel intentional. Rehearsal reduces the chance you will undermine your own position with filler language. When you have practiced, your voice will not betray doubt, and others will be more likely to accept your framing. Listening is the counterbalance to powerful asking. The negotiator who speaks most is rarely the one who gains the most insight. When you listen deeply, you learn what the other side truly cares about. This information allows you to shape offers that feel fair and attractive. Active listening includes paying attention to tone, hesitations, and nonverbal signals. These cues often reveal constraints that are not voiced. Resist the temptation to prepare your next argument while they speak. Instead, give full attention and allow space for them to explain. That space often reveals priorities and trade-offs you can use to craft a winning solution. Use open questions to unlock hidden priorities. Questions that ask for explanation or desired outcomes invite the other party to reveal values and fears. Ask about what success would look like from their perspective, what constraints they must manage, and which trade-offs they consider acceptable. These inquiries convert partial information into strategic intelligence. When you know what the other party needs most, you can assemble options that are both attractive and efficient, solutions that require less concession from you while delivering more perceived value to them. Silence is an instrument of influence. After you ask a challenging question or present a proposal, stay quiet. The discomfort of silence makes many people fill the void with additional information or, sometimes, concessions. Use this to learn more and to create leverage. If you hear a flat refusal, pause and ask, "Help me understand what would need to change for this to be a yes." That question transforms a closed answer into a diagnostic moment and often opens the path to creative resolution. Handling rejection requires emotional discipline. No is rarely terminal. It is feedback. When you receive a negative response, stay composed and curious. Ask for the reasons behind the refusal and listen without interruption. This approach yields the data you need to adapt your offer. Sometimes the objection points to a misunderstanding, sometimes to risk concerns, and sometimes to timing or internal politics. Decode the barrier and present a targeted adjustment that addresses it directly. In many negotiations, a thoughtful counterproposal built from the insights gleaned after an initial no becomes the turning point. Rejection also serves as a training ground for resilience. The negotiator who practices hearing no without collapsing becomes more effective because each rejection removes some of the fear around it. Engage regularly in small asks that risk a negative response to build tolerance. Over time, your emotional response to setback will shift from shutdown to problem solving. That shift changes everything. You stop defending your ego and start solving problems. Confidence is not an innate trait but a developed state. It grows from preparation, evidence, and repeated practice. Start by cataloging prior successes and using them as proof points in your mind. Visualization trains your nervous system to behave as if those wins will repeat. Combine mental rehearsal with physical rituals, breathing techniques, posture cues, or a short pre-meeting routine that centers you. These practices anchor calm focus and reduce the chance that anxiety will dominate in the moment. Language plays a subtle but decisive role in projecting confidence. Replace hedged phrasing with decisive formulations that reflect choice rather than hope. Say what you will do and what you expect rather than listing uncertainties. When you speak with clarity, others mirror that certainty. Avoid softening language that invites the other party to lower your ask. Instead, frame statements as offers grounded in your contribution and their benefit. The value equation reframes selling as an exchange of problem-solving outcomes. People purchase results and the relief of a problem solved. Your job is to connect features of your offer to outcomes the other person cares about. Lead with benefits and frame price as one component of a larger return on investment calculation. Use case studies, testimonials, and concise stories to demonstrate how similar clients achieved results. When the other party sees tangible evidence of impact, price becomes easier to negotiate because it is evaluated through the lens of value rather than cost. Construct offers as packages rather than single items. Bundle services, guarantees, delivery terms, or incentives so that trade-offs become possible and perceived value increases. Packages make negotiation multidimensional, which is useful because win-win solutions often occur by trading across different priorities rather than through simple price haggling. Offer a menu of choices that protect your most important terms while giving the other side perceived agency and control. Ethics and integrity are not constraints on negotiation power, they are its foundation. Short-term gain achieved through deception corrodes reputation and removes future opportunities. Trust is a form of leverage that accumulates over time. Be transparent about constraints while withholding tactical details, and decide beforehand the lines you will not cross. If the other party uses unethical tactics, respond with calm firmness and, if necessary, be ready to walk away. Walking away from a deal that requires compromising your values preserves your credibility and ultimately increases your long-term bargaining power. Win-win thinking asks you to prioritize interests over positions. Positions are fixed demands, interests are the needs and drivers beneath them. By seeking to satisfy underlying interests, you often find that collaboration expands the available value. Ask questions to uncover those interests and propose creative, multi-issue solutions that make both sides better off. Where possible, use objective benchmarks, market standards, third-party valuations, or performance metrics, to anchor fairness. Agreements that are perceived as fair are more durable and easier to implement. Build rapport early and earn it through genuine curiosity and respect. Rapport smooths conversations, reduces friction, and increases the willingness to share information. Use mirroring and appropriate humor to humanize the exchange, but prioritize authenticity. People detect inauthenticity quickly, and forced niceties erode trust. Maintain respect, particularly when pushing for strong terms. Respect preserves dignity and opens the door for future collaboration. After each negotiation, debrief yourself. What revealed the most about the other party's priorities? Where did you feel unsteady and why? What small change could improve your opening or your responses next time? Reflection converts experience into skill. Keep a short negotiation journal and update it after key interactions. Over months and years, those notes will shape a personal playbook that fits your style and industry. Every conversation is an opportunity to practice and refine. Keep your standards high, but treat each outcome as data rather than destiny. With consistent rehearsal, strategic silence, empathetic listening, ethical boundaries, and offers built around value, you will shift not only specific outcomes but also how others perceive working with you. Your reputation as someone who is fair, prepared, and effective will precede you, creating momentum that multiplies small wins into a sustained advantage. Confidence is not a switch you flip, it is a muscle you strengthen by doing. Too many people treat presence as an innate trait, something either present or absent. In reality, presence is learned behavior anchored in preparation, habit, and repeated exposure to discomfort. The negotiator who projects unshakable presence is the one who has rehearsed difficult conversations, collected evidence of past wins, and developed routines that steady the body and mind before high-stakes exchanges. This chapter explores the mechanics of confidence so you can cultivate a steady, persuasive presence that feels natural rather than forced. Begin with evidence. Keep a record of outcomes you produced, problems you solved, and situations where you held your ground and achieved results. This is not vanity, it is data for your nervous system. When anxiety creeps in, review the list. The brain responds to concrete records of past competence far more reliably than to abstract affirmations. Transform accomplishments into accessible touchstones you can call to mind before stepping into any negotiation. Develop rituals that prime your physiology. Small physical habits reliably change internal states. Controlled breath, deliberate posture, and a short centering sequence are not theater, they are tools that reduce stress hormones and increase cognitive clarity. A 2-minute breathing pattern that slows inhalation and prolongs exhalation calms the autonomic nervous system. Standing in an aligned, grounded posture for 30 seconds informs your brain you are alert and capable. These rituals need to be practiced until they become automatic cues that shift you from reactive to composed. Mental rehearsal trains your response under pressure. Visualize the room, the voices, the objections, and your calm responses. Imagine resistance and see yourself handling it smoothly. When the actual moment arrives, your body will default to the rehearsed pattern rather than panic. Athletes, public speakers, and pilots all rehearse mentally because the mind does not distinguish vividly imagined scenarios from lived experience. Use visualization to embed the behaviors you want into your automatic responses. Confidence grows from action more than from thought alone. Seek deliberate exposure to challenging conversations in low-risk settings. Ask for small favors, negotiate a minor term, or request a slight adjustment to a service. Each time you hear no and continue, your tolerance for discomfort increases and your reflexive fear diminishes. The key is gradual escalation. Seek discomfort that stretches you without overwhelming you. Over time the threshold of what feels risky expands and opportunities that once paralyzed you become routine. Language shapes perception. Replace hedged phrases with assertive formulations that communicate choice. Say what you will do or what you propose rather than framing statements as tentative possibilities. Avoid minimizing words that undermine your position. Use declarative sentences anchored to value and evidence. This does not mean aggressive rhetoric, it means clear, purposeful language that conveys competence and intention. Detach from outcomes to increase leverage. When you are overly attached to a single result, you reveal neediness, and neediness reduces negotiating power. Detachment does not mean indifference, it means understanding that a single negotiation is not the sole determinant of your future. Strengthen alternatives, create options, and remind yourself that walking away remains a viable and often wise course. That internal freedom changes your external demeanor. You speak less from fear and more from choice, which is inherently persuasive. Anchor yourself in purpose. When the reason for your negotiation extends beyond ego or short-term gain, your presence is steadier. Negotiators who work from purpose communicate with a deeper conviction because their ask serves a broader objective. This sense of mission transforms anxiety into determination. It allows you to advocate strongly because you are serving a cause or protecting a stake larger than the immediate reward. Practice emotional regulation. High-stakes conversations trigger stress responses that can lead to reactive language or abrupt concessions. Learn techniques to slow down and respond from a calm physiological state. Name the emotion internally and allow it space without acting on it. Use a short pause, a breath, or a structural tactic such as asking a clarifying question to regain composure. These small interruptions break the momentum of escalation and re-establish your control. Build an environment that reinforces confidence. Surround yourself with people who will role-play honestly and give constructive feedback. Find mentors who model composed presence and debrief your performances together. Learning from those who have more experience compresses your development timeline. Importantly, seek colleagues who will hold you to high standards without demeaning progress. Confidence thrives in a culture of candid improvement. Mirror confident others selectively. Observing role models provides templates for behavior. Notice how they breathe, how they phrase requests, and how they manage silence. Do not imitate superficially, instead, integrate elements that fit your style. Authenticity remains essential because ersatz confidence rings false. Borrow patterns, then adapt them until they align with your genuine voice. Recognize the contagious nature of confidence. When you walk into a room with composed certainty, others feel safer and more willing to engage. That safety converts into greater openness, easier information sharing, and often quicker agreements. Confidence is social, it shifts the group's emotional climate. Use that effect responsibly because confidence that masks dishonesty or overreach will quickly erode trust. Confidence without competence is dangerous. Always pair presence with preparation. Confidence amplified by facts, evidence, and clear planning is persuasive. The combination signals that you are grounded rather than performative. In the absence of substance, confident posture becomes a temporary bluff that is unlikely to withstand scrutiny or long-term relationships. Cultivate a growth mindset. View each negotiation as data for your improvement, not as a final judgment on your worth. When outcomes disappoint, analyze what worked, what didn't, and what you can test next time. This iterative approach reduces perfectionism and builds resilience because progress replaces a fear of failure orientation. Physical routines matter. Sleep, movement, and nutrition influence your baseline state. Negotiators who are chronically exhausted or poorly nourished will find it harder to hold steady under pressure. Prioritize habits that optimize cognitive function and stress tolerance. Small investments in physical care yield large returns in negotiating presence. Celebrate micro-wins. After each successful ask, no matter how small, take a moment to acknowledge the behavior, not just the outcome. Reinforcing the action that led to success makes repetition more likely. These celebrations are fuel for the confidence muscle. Over time, the accumulated moments of effective behavior create a durable sense of capability that is not dependent on external validation. Practice humility alongside confidence. Being present does not require certainty about every detail. Admit when you do not have an answer and propose a timeline to follow up. This honesty builds credibility because it signals reliability and respect for truth. People prefer working with those who are competent and candid rather than those who feign omniscience. Use calibration questions to test limits without committing. Phrasing such as, "Would that be feasible given X?" or "How would you feel about a proposal that includes Y?" invites the other party to react without locking either side into a position. These probes gather information while maintaining flexibility. Train for contingencies. Decide in advance how you will respond to aggressive tactics, surprise deadlines, or sudden pressure. Having scripts prepared for common derailments reduces the cognitive load during the exchange and preserves your composure. Use concise, neutral language to deflect tactics designed to trigger an emotional reaction and bring the conversation back to interests rather than positions. Finally, live negotiation as a practice rather than a performative test. Seek variety in your negotiating experiences. Negotiate across contexts, work, personal life, volunteer settings, so your skills generalize. Frequent practice increases fluency and reduces the novelty that fuels fear. Over time, the combination of rehearsal, mental preparation, physiological routines, and reflective learning builds a steady, persuasive presence that feels natural and authentic. When you cultivate this integrated approach to confidence, negotiation becomes less about overpowering the other side and more about embodying a composed, reliable partner who is prepared to create shared value. That presence is both powerful and humane. It increases your ability to shape outcomes while preserving relationships and integrity. Mastering the value equation means shifting your focus from selling features to solving meaningful problems. People make decisions based on perceived improvements to their situation, less risk, faster results, clearer outcomes, so your job is to translate every element of your offer into a measurable advantage for them. Start every major conversation by asking, not telling, what outcome matters most to you? When you frame proposals around outcomes rather than specifications, cost becomes a subordinate variable in their decision calculus. Lead with relevance and clarity. Demonstrate how your solution addresses the priorities they just named. Use short, concrete examples that show measurable impact, time saved, revenue generated, risk avoided, or cost reduced. Stories and past results create mental shortcuts for decision makers. They reduce uncertainty and increase willingness to accept higher fees when the return is evident. When the benefits are vivid, price is judged against value instead of feeling like a sting. Build offers that invite choice. Present 2 or 3 packaged options that differ in scope and risk allocation. This menu approach helps the other party feel in control and naturally reveals their priorities by what they favor. Packages should be constructed so that concessions can be traded across dimensions, deadline for price, scope for guarantees, or exclusivity for tiers of support. The multi-issue structure reduces the tendency for negotiations to grind down into price alone and opens pathways to creative exchange. Use benchmarks and third-party data to make fairness visible. Objective references like market rates, peer deals, or independent performance metrics take the heat out of subjective arguments. When both parties accept a common standard, you transform bargaining into allocation, who receives what share of a known pie, rather than adversarial debate over reality. This subtle shift makes it easier to find equitable splits and builds durable consent. Timing and sequencing are powerful. Don't rush into detailed terms before value is established. Build the cognitive frame by exploring needs, then paint the outcome picture, then introduce numbers. When the audience already imagines the benefit, cost becomes an administrative detail. And when you present figures, anchor strategically, set an opening that gives room to maneuver toward your objective while remaining credible. Ethical consistency increases leverage over time. Trust is a multi-deal currency that compounds. Being straightforward about constraints, honoring small commitments, and correcting mistakes promptly create reputational capital that makes future conversations smoother. Conversely, short-term manipulations erode trust and force counterparts into protective stances that increase friction and cost. Make integrity non-negotiable. It preserves relationships and multiplies opportunities. There is a practical relationship between ethics and leverage. Partners prefer to reopen conversations with people they trust. A reputation for fairness shortens approval cycles, reduces the need for due diligence, and can even tilt negotiations in your favor when times are tight. Consider every encounter a chance to build credibility that benefits subsequent deals. When the other side resists price, widen the set of terms. Ask if risk sharing, phased delivery, performance incentives, or extended support would make the proposal acceptable. Many objections vanish when the structure of the deal changes because the perceived risk falls or the timing of value aligns with their needs. Be creative. Sometimes shifting a payment schedule or adding a limited guarantee converts resistance into acceptance without changing your headline price. Silence remains one of the strongest instruments. After posing a probing question or after presenting a package, hold the pause and observe. People typically rush to fill silence with words that reveal constraints, reveal authority, or move toward agreement simply to remove the discomfort. Use these moments to gather intelligence and to preserve the dignity of the conversation. A well-timed silence is often the only thing needed to let the other side surface a concession or clarify a hidden priority. Cultivate the discipline of the after-ask pause. Once you state your terms, stop. Resist the urge to explain, justify, or soften. The pause applies gentle social pressure and often leads to clearer responses. If you continually undercut your requests with follow-up words, you teach others to expect concessions. The silent close is a habit that signals confidence and creates opportunities for discovery. Win-win construction requires imagination. Look beyond positions to find complementary interests. For instance, one side may prioritize speed while the other values cost control. A solution that shortens delivery milestones in exchange for staged payments or a premium option delivers value to both. Similarly, Combining a higher base price with performance-linked rebates aligns incentives and reduces resistance because it ties payment to outcomes the customer values. Use log rolling intentionally. Trade off items of differential importance. Ask the other party early which terms matter most and which matter least. When you know their ranking, you can offer concessions on low priority points that feel generous to them but cost little to you in relative terms. This technique requires careful listening and creativity but produces agreements that feel balanced and earned. Document fairness points in writing as you go. If a compromise is reached on a side issue, summarize it aloud and confirm the mutual understanding. These micro-confirmations prevent later disputes and build a cumulative record that reinforces trust. Clear notes and a concise follow-up email turn a fuzzy verbal understanding into a durable agreement and prevent misunderstandings that can sour relationships. Handling rejection gracefully advances progress. Every no contains a kernel of truth about priorities, fears, or constraints. When you encounter rejection, ask clarifying diagnostic questions. What specifically concerns you? Is it timing, price, risk, or internal approval? Then propose targeted adjustments. Sometimes shifting a delivery date or offering a limited pilot is enough to convert a firm no into a workable yes. Keep in mind that many deals close after multiple iterations once the underlying problems are addressed. Rejection also provides calibration. If a proposal is rejected strongly, the intensity of the response indicates the depth of the boundary and helps you map the negotiation landscape. Record these reactions for future rounds and for refining your BATNA. Use rejection to strengthen alternatives, not to shrink your ambitions. Persistence is pragmatic, not stubborn. Follow up with additional, well-timed information and gently probe if circumstances have shifted. Often decisions stall for administrative or political reasons rather than substantive opposition. A tactful check-in that provides new data or frames the offer in terms of updated priorities can turn delay into momentum. Keep the relationship warm without pressure by sharing relevant insights or case studies rather than demanding answers. Prepare for cultural differences. Silence, directness, and the pacing of negotiation vary across cultures. In some contexts, pauses are expected and comfortable, in others, they signal indecision. Match your use of silence and pacing to cultural norms while preserving core strategy. Research how counterparts prefer to exchange offers, how they treat face saving, and what procedural steps they expect. Cultural fluency reduces misinterpretation and increases the chance of a successful, respectful exchange. Build rapport actively and earn trust through authenticity. Quick rapport is not about flattery, it is about demonstrating genuine curiosity and honoring the other party's perspective. Small acts of attentiveness, remembering a prior concern, referencing a shared contact, or noting a previous achievement, signal that you see them as more than a transaction. Rapport reduces suspicion and opens the door to candid conversation, which in turn reveals the very information you need to tailor compelling offers. Design creative contracts that align incentives. Consider performance guarantees, deferred payments tied to milestones, or joint pilots that reduce risk for both parties. When you build shared upside, both parties become invested in execution. Crafting contractual mechanisms that reward performance and mitigate downside transforms negotiation into a partnership rather than a single transaction. Regularly refine your playbook. After each negotiation, extract the key lessons and update your approach. Which openings worked? Which sequences of questions unlocked the most insight? When did silence yield more information than additional talking? Over time, these notes become a personalized guide that reflects real-world learning. Finally, maintain humility coupled with ambition. Approach negotiations as a continuous learning process. Be ambitious in your objectives but humble in your assumptions. Test offers, gather feedback, and iterate. The people who become outstanding negotiators are those who remain curious, adaptable, and committed to mutual value creation. This is the work of building durable influence, translate features into outcomes, architect flexible packages, use silence and empathy to uncover priorities, and construct agreements that both protect and propel the relationship forward. When you consistently apply these principles, negotiations shift from adversarial sparring to collaborative problem solving, producing results that feel fair, sustainable, and productive for all involved. Building genuine connection is not a soft skill, it is a strategic advantage that transforms difficult conversations into collaborative problem solving. Rapport is more than polite small talk. It is a sincere recognition of the other person's perspective, an effort to understand how they experienced the situation and a commitment to treating them with respect. When rapport exists, information flows more freely, tension dissolves more quickly, and options that once seemed impossible become visible. Invest time early to discover what you have in common, what pressures they face, and what success looks like for them. These discoveries convert strangers into partners and opponents into allies. The first step to building lasting rapport is authentic curiosity. Ask thoughtful, open-ended questions and then truly listen to the answers. Notice not only the words but the tone and the pauses. Follow up on cues that suggest deeper concerns or unspoken priorities. When you reflect what you've heard back to the person, you demonstrate that you are engaged and that you value their perspective. This act of attentive listening creates trust, and trust is the lubricant that makes difficult negotiations move smoothly. Body language and tone matter because they carry information that words cannot. Maintain steady eye contact, moderate your pace, and choose posture that signals openness without surrender. Mirroring can be useful when done subtly. Aligning your tempo, phrasing, or energy with the other person can create a subconscious sense of familiarity. Use humor sparingly and with sensitivity. A well-placed light moment can ease tension, but misplaced levity can appear dismissive. Above all, be genuine. People detect insincerity quickly, and forced rapport erodes credibility more than having none at all. Trust is built over time through small, consistent actions. Honor commitments, follow up promptly, and be transparent about constraints. If you say you will send information, send it on time. If you cannot meet a promise, notify the other party early and propose a reasonable alternative. These gestures signal reliability and build a reputation that compounds. Over time, your history of consistent behavior becomes a form of leverage. Counterparts prefer to re-engage with those they trust because doing so reduces risk and cognitive load. Ethics is not an optional lens, it is a core business strategy. Negotiating with integrity preserves long-term access to opportunities and partners. Deceptive tactics may produce short-term wins, but they erode the foundation for repeat business and durable relationships. Be clear about what you will and will not do, and set boundaries that reflect your values. When the other party behaves unethically, respond with calm firmness. Point out the issue, restate your expectations for fair conduct, and be prepared to walk if the violation is fundamental. Demonstrating that you will not tolerate unethical behavior often discourages future transgressions and signals that you are a principled partner. Cultural intelligence is part of ethical negotiation. Norms around directness, hierarchy, silence, and saving face differ across contexts. Research the cultural expectations of your counterpart and adapt your style accordingly. In some interactions, long pauses are normal and respected. In others, brisk exchanges indicate efficiency and professionalism. Misreading these cues can derail what might otherwise be a straightforward negotiation. Cultural sensitivity reduces misinterpretation, preserves dignity, and deepens rapport. Documentation is a final act of care. Summarize agreements, clarify next steps, and record responsibilities in writing. A simple, clear recap after a conversation prevents misunderstandings and signals that you are organized and reliable. Formal contracts guard against drift and protect the relationship by making expectations explicit. Documentation is not legalistic hair-splitting, it is a shared reference that keeps both sides aligned and reduces the friction that can otherwise erode trust. When a negotiation becomes tense, use reframing to move the focus from positions to interests. Restate mutual objectives and propose a problem-solving posture. For instance, shift the conversation from, "Who gets more?" to, "How can we both meet our core needs?" This frames the exchange as a joint project rather than a duel, and it often reveals options that were hidden when both sides were defending positions. Reframing invites creativity and reduces the emotional intensity that often locks parties into zero-sum thinking. The habit of constructing options before committing to a single figure is a strategic discipline. Propose multiple pathways that vary across timing, guarantees, scope, and payment. When you present alternatives, you give the other party a sense of agency and you learn what each option truly costs on both sides. Options create trade space and reduce the pressure that turns negotiators into unilateral concession machines. When choices are visible, people select what aligns most with their priorities, and you preserve the terms that matter most to you. Use objective criteria to anchor fairness. Bring independent benchmarks, market data, or external standards into the conversation to reduce subjective debate. When both parties accept a shared reference point, the negotiation evolves into a discussion of allocation rather than a fight over who is right. This technique reduces defensiveness and speeds consensus because it shifts the discussion from personality-based argumentation to an analysis of evidence. Negotiation is tactical and emotional at the same time. Manage both domains by separating process from content. Define procedures at the start, how decisions will be validated, who needs to sign off, and what timeline will guide the interaction. Agreeing on process reduces conflict about method so you can focus on substance. When emotions rise, return to the agreed process and use pauses or caucuses to cool off. This disciplined approach allows both parties to preserve dignity while solving the underlying problems. The ability to pivot is essential. When a stated approach fails to produce progress, be ready to propose a pilot, a phased rollout, or a limited test that reduces perceived risk. Small pilots often convert skepticism into evidence of value and unlock broader agreements. Designing experiments also allows both sides to adjust expectations based on real outcomes rather than forecasts. This reduces the fear that often blocks deals and creates a path to larger commitments built on demonstrated success. Effective negotiators also manage time as a strategic lever. Deadlines can compress decision-making and pressure concessions, but self-imposed deadlines can be equally useful to signal seriousness. Use timing thoughtfully, deploy scarcity when it creates legitimate urgency, and avoid using false pressure, which undermines trust. If the other side demands an immediate commitment under dubious urgency, slow the process and request a clear rationale. Creating deliberate time for consideration often produces more thoughtful, durable agreements. The debrief is where learning happens. After every negotiation, take time to reflect on what worked, what surprised you, and which moments felt avoidable. Capture these lessons in a short note that becomes a living playbook. Over time, your accumulated observations will reveal patterns in your style, common objections you face, and effective framing that resonates with your counterparts. This reflective practice converts experience into expertise. Finally, see negotiation as a lifelong craft. Mastery is not a destination but a trajectory of continual practice, reflection, and adaptation. Stay curious. Seek mentors. Accept feedback. Test new phrasings and sequences. Treat each conversation as an experiment that yields data about human priorities and compromise. Over time, the patterns become clearer, your instincts keener, and your ability to create fair, durable agreements increases. Build relationships that outlast individual deals. Aim for negotiated outcomes that create ongoing value, not just one-time wins. When you make others feel respected, understood, and fairly treated, you create the conditions for future cooperation and more significant shared achievements. Negotiation practiced with integrity, curiosity, and disciplined preparation transforms transactions into partnerships and competition into collaboration. As we near the close of this journey through negotiation, it helps to synthesize the practical habits and internal disciplines that turn consistent practice into lasting mastery. Mastery is not a checklist you complete, it is a set of interlocking routines and attitudes you cultivate over time. The most effective negotiators treat each conversation as both a live exchange and a rehearsal for the next one. They integrate preparation, empathy, strategic silence, ethical clarity, and reflective learning into a single operating rhythm that produces reliable outcomes and enduring relationships. Begin by treating every negotiation as a system with inputs, processes, and outputs. The inputs are the facts you gather beforehand, objectives, alternatives, the counterpart's pressures, and relevant benchmarks. The processes are the techniques you deploy in the room, the opening frame, the questions you ask, the strategic pauses, and the sequences of offers and concessions. The outputs are the agreements, the documented commitments, and the lessons you log afterward. When you view negotiation as an engineered flow, it becomes easier to identify breakdowns and to iterate improvements. You stop blaming personality and start optimizing variables that consistently move results. Develop a short pre-negotiation checklist that anchors your state and aligns your strategy. This checklist should be compact and tactical. Remind yourself of your top 3 objectives, your BATNA, the key data points that support your opening anchor, and a short breathing or posture routine that centers you. Run this checklist before every important conversation. The act of checking boxes calms the mind and reduces the chance you will make concessions from a place of stress. Over time, this ritual becomes a stabilizer that maintains clarity when momentum shifts or when surprises surface. Cultivate curiosity as a default stance. Curiosity converts conflict into inquiry. When you approach a tough exchange with the question mindset, what do they truly need, what are their constraints, why is this issue important now, you transform adversarial energy into problem-solving energy. Curiosity keeps your ego in check because it positions you as a learner, which paradoxically increases your influence. People open up when they feel someone is genuinely trying to understand them. You gain essential intelligence that allows you to craft proposals they cannot easily refuse. Practice the discipline of brief, focused notes during conversations. Capturing key phrases, priorities, and commitments in writing serves 2 functions. It keeps your attention anchored in the present and it creates an external record you can use to summarize and confirm later. Human memory is fallible under stress. Written notes preserve precision and prevent misinterpretation. After the meeting, use those notes to draft a concise follow-up that confirms next steps and records any tentative agreements. This follow-up signals professionalism and reduces the chance of drift. Refine your narrative skills. Humans respond to stories more easily than to raw data. When you need to persuade, frame facts through short narratives that illustrate impact. Use a character, a challenge, and an outcome to make your point. Keep the story tightly linked to the counterpart's concerns so it reads like a mirror rather than a sales pitch. A well-chosen anecdote or a succinct case study reduces cognitive friction and allows decision-makers to imagine a favorable outcome more vividly. Practice modular offers that make negotiation multidimensional. Instead of presenting a single figure, design 3 coherent options that vary on scope, timing, and risk allocation. Each option should be crafted to appeal to different priorities you believe the counterpart might hold. This approach increases perceived agency for the other party and reveals their ranked preferences by what they select or probe further. It also prevents a single point of contention from grinding the negotiation to a halt because you can trade across dimensions rather than conceding superficially on what matters most to you. Maintain a habit of ethical clarity. Negotiation efficacy is amplified by reputation. Acting with integrity produces cumulative advantages, shorter approval cycles, less friction in due diligence, and a tendency for others to offer better terms because they expect honest behavior. Make it a practice to state your commitments precisely, to avoid exaggeration, and to correct errors swiftly. These small acts of professional morality are a force multiplier. When your counterpart trusts you, they are more likely to provide useful information, to consider joint solutions, and to prefer long-term collaboration with you. Build resilience through deliberate exposure. Schedule regular low-stakes negotiations where you test anchors, practice silent pauses, and rehearse responses to common objections. These practice sessions can be informal: ask for an upgrade, negotiate a small contract, request a favor from a colleague. The key is to create a safe environment where you are allowed to fail and to learn. As your tolerance for discomfort increases, so does your capacity to hold ground in high-stakes moments. Use silence as a tactical response, not as avoidance. The aim is to create space for disclosure and to shift pressure away from you. Silence is most effective when it follows a clear signal, a sharp question, a specific number, or a concise restatement of terms. The pause that follows should feel purposeful. While the silence works, observe nonverbal cues, micro-expressions, changes in posture, or the pace of breathing. These signals provide clues about whether the counterpart is processing, resisting, or softening. Your job is to interpret those cues and follow up with a targeted prompt that advances the conversation. Master the art of the diagnostic question. When a proposal meets resistance, use open-ended inquiries that reveal the root cause of the objection. Questions such as what would need to change for this to be acceptable, or which elements cause the most concern, shift the conversation from judgment to problem-solving. These diagnostic queries often suggest avenues for compromise that preserve core value while addressing particular fears. Diagnostic questioning converts friction into information. Anchor your targets using evidence rather than authority. Numbers, benchmarks, and third-party data give your anchor credibility and shift the burden of proof away from your personal preference. When you make a claim, support it with a concise reference to a relevant benchmark or outcome. This practice reduces the appearance of arbitrariness and makes compromise more straightforward because the negotiation becomes about aligning with shared standards rather than personal wills. Design agreements that include mechanisms for verification and adjustment. Even the best-intentioned deals can stumble during execution. Build and review points, success metrics, and clearly defined escalation paths. These mechanisms turn friction into predefined processes and prevent misunderstandings from escalating into broken relationships. They also make the agreement more implementable because both sides know how to measure progress and how to respond when realities differ from expectations. Invest in getting the right people to the table. Decisions are often delayed or derailed when a negotiation lacks the necessary authority. Clarify who needs to be present and which roles hold final sign-off before finalizing critical terms. When you invite the decision makers early, you reduce the risk of later reversals and create a velocity that favors closure. Make sure the meeting structure allows those decision makers to speak plainly without last-minute escalations that undo progress. Be conscious of the power of small gestures. Sending a prompt thank you note, providing a concise follow-up, or delivering a promised document on time signals competence and respect. These micro-actions accumulate trust and make partners more likely to extend goodwill in future interactions. Always assume that repeatability matters. The way you behave in small moments forecasts how you will perform in larger ones. Learn to read emotional subtext without matching it. When counterpart displays frustration, anxiety, or impatience, name it calmly and offer a process that reduces friction. For example, when tension rises, you might say, "I sense this topic is creating tension. Would a short break or an isolated discussion on this point be helpful?" Offering process options concentrates attention on method rather than blame and keeps the relationship productive. Treat agreements as evolving contracts rather than final verdicts. Market conditions change, leaders rotate, and new constraints emerge. Include clauses that allow for renegotiation at pre-agreed triggers or milestones. When both parties expect adaptation, changes are less likely to become sources of conflict. A posture of pragmatic flexibility, paired with clearly defined rules for change, preserves partnerships through inevitable shifts. Hold a structured debrief after major negotiations. Ask what went well, what surprised you, and where you felt unprepared. Capture the top 3 lessons and the single action you will take before the next negotiation. Keep these debriefs brief but consistent. Over time, the small improvements compound into a significant edge because you convert each outcome into a learning opportunity rather than a one-off event. Cultivate humility. Recognize that even the most practiced negotiator will sometimes misread a signal or choose a suboptimal concession. Humility allows you to pivot quickly, to own mistakes, and to restore goodwill. Admitting an oversight and proposing a practical remedy often strengthens the relationship more than maintaining a stubborn posture for the sake of pride. Finally, sustain curiosity about human dynamics. Negotiation is fundamentally about people, about motivations, fears, aspirations, and incentives. Read widely about psychology, organizational behavior, and cultural norms. Practice conversations with people from different backgrounds to reduce blind spots. The more you understand the architecture of human priorities, the more refined and effective your proposals will become. When you integrate these practices, systemic preparation, targeted curiosity, careful note-taking, narrative framing, modular offers, ethical clarity, resilience building, tactical silence, diagnostic questioning, evidence-based anchoring, verification mechanisms, correct stakeholder involvement, attention to small gestures, emotional calibration, adaptive agreements, structured debriefs, humility, and ongoing study, you create a compounding advantage. Negotiation ceases to be a collection of ad hoc moves and becomes a disciplined craft that consistently produces fair, durable, and often creative outcomes. You become the kind of negotiator people prefer to work with, prepared, thoughtful, principled, and effective. Keep practicing. Keep reflecting. Keep building the small routines that make composure automatic and creativity habitual. Over time, your capacity to influence and to create shared value will grow not through flashy tricks but through the steady accumulation of disciplined habits and thoughtful behavior. We have reached the final section of this guide, and here the focus is on integration, taking everything you have learned and turning it into a reliable way of operating every day. Mastery is not a single dramatic breakthrough, it is the slow accretion of habits, the steady refinement of small practices, and the willingness to treat each conversation as a chance to learn and to influence with integrity. When you combine preparation, curiosity, ethic, silence, and resilient execution, negotiation stops being a sporadic skill and becomes a dependable part of how you get things done in life. Start by building a simple, repeatable routine that you can apply before every important conversation. Keep it short, remind yourself of the top 3 outcomes you want, confirm your BATNA, recall the key evidence that supports your anchor, and run a quick centering breath to steady your body. This ritual will calm the nervous system and focus your attention on the variables that matter most. The consistency of this routine matters more than its length because small, dependable pre-game rituals turn anxiety into preparation. Treat each negotiation as an experiment where the goal is to learn as much as to win. Frame questions that reveal constraints and desires rather than statements that push positions. The default posture of curiosity converts defensive interactions into diagnostic interviews where you gather information that will shape creative solutions. When you lead with learning, you gain both the empathy to build viable proposals and the strategic intelligence to make trade-offs that preserve core value. Keep the architecture of your deals flexible. Avoid single-option proposals that force brittle choices. Instead, present coherent alternatives that differ on scope, timing, and risk allocation. This gives your counterpart agency and shows that you understand multiple paths to a good outcome. When people choose, they feel ownership. When they feel ownership, implementation is easier and relationships are stronger. Build options that protect your most important terms while offering meaningful variation on lesser points. Make transparency part of your brand. People do not simply sign contracts, they place trust in patterns of behavior. Be precise in commitments, follow through on small promises, and correct course quickly when you err. Transparency builds reputational capital that compounds. Over time, being consistently reliable shortens approval cycles, reduces transactional friction, and opens opportunities that are unavailable to negotiators who trade on bluff or obfuscation. Practice the skill of diagnostic questioning. When you meet resistance, ask what would need to change for the proposal to work, or which parts feel risky to them. These questions are not manipulative, they create the platform for problem solving. They move the conversation from blocking to designing. Many stalemates vanish once the underlying constraint is identified and addressed through a targeted adjustment rather than a broad concession. Use silence with intention. The quiet that follows a precise question is often more revealing than the most polished pitch. People instinctively fill empty space to reduce discomfort and to regain control of the conversation. When you hold a pause, you invite disclosure. Learn to sit with that discomfort so you can harvest the information that fills the void. Over time you will notice that well-placed silence often elicits the very clues you need to assemble an effective trade. Build your emotional stamina by seeking low-risk opportunities to practice. Negotiate small things until asking and handling pushback become routine. Each time you step into a conversation that challenges you, you extend the boundary of what feels manageable. The accumulation of these micro-practices reduces the psychological weight of big moments and increases your willingness to hold to your core terms when it matters most. Adopt an abundance mindset while strengthening your alternatives. Scarcity thinking narrows options and increases reactivity. Strengthening your BATNA is not about bluffing, it is about creating genuine alternatives so that walking away is a credible, empowered choice. This strategic freedom changes how you speak, how you pause, and how you allocate concessions. When you have options, you negotiate from possibility rather than from fear. Keep your language crisp and anchored to outcomes. Replace hedges with clear propositions that tie your ask to concrete benefits. People respond to clarity because it reduces the cognitive friction of decision-making. Make your case with compact narratives, brief examples of similar work that produced measurable results. Stories convert abstract claims into concrete expectations and help decision-makers imagine the future you propose. Design agreements that include clear verification and adaptation mechanisms. Even the best intentions meet the realities of execution. Build milestones, measurable success criteria, and reasonable review points into the contract so both sides can recalibrate without blame when circumstances shift. Agreements that anticipate change are more durable because they treat adaptation as a planned element rather than a crisis-triggered exception. Invest in relationships that outlast individual transactions. Negotiations are not isolated events. When you consistently behave with fairness and competence, you create a network of partners who prefer to work with you again. That long-run orientation often produces better immediate results as well because people anticipate future interactions when they evaluate current choices. A reputation for integrity and follow-through is a competitive asset that multiplies the value of every subsequent conversation. Keep a short playbook and update it regularly. After each negotiation, jot down the one thing that went especially well and the one thing you will change next time. Over months and years these brief notes become a customized manual that reflects your context and your growth. The cumulative effect of these small improvements is the real engine of mastery. Manage cultural and contextual differences with humility and curiosity. Different settings have distinct norms around silence, directness, and the pace of agreement. When you show awareness and adapt respectfully to these norms, you avoid missteps and strengthen rapport. This cultural fluency expands the range of settings where you can operate effectively and reduces costly misunderstandings. Accept that setbacks are part of the learning curve. You will lose some negotiations. You will be surprised. When that happens, slow down and analyze. Where did assumptions go wrong? Which signals did you misread? What question would have revealed the truth earlier? Treat failure as feedback and convert it into a calibrated test for your next approach. Hold a disciplined debrief after major negotiations. Limit it to a few focused questions: which evidence mattered, which phrases landed, and what will you try differently next time? Keep the debrief lean and actionable. Use it to sharpen your playbook rather than to rehash emotion. This reflective habit converts experience into reliable insight. Led with integrity because it scales. Short-term victories gained through deception or pressure are fleeting. The long arc of influence is shaped by consistent, principled behavior. When you manage to be firm without being dismissive, bold without being reckless, and persistent without being petty, you create relationships that generate sustained value. That is the most powerful leverage a negotiator can accumulate. Finally, cultivate curiosity as a life habit. Read broadly about human behavior, listen to varied perspectives, and test your assumptions in real conversations. The best negotiators are lifelong students of people and of context. They apply frameworks, but they always adjust to the human reality in front of them. Keep refining, keep practicing, and allow negotiation to be the vehicle through which you advance both your objectives and the quality of your relationships. This is the path to lasting negotiation skill, practical routines, intentional learning, ethical clarity, and a focus on mutual value. When you embody these practices, conversations stop being random events and become predictable opportunities to create outcomes that matter. The work is continuous, but the rewards compound.